What's that? I hit new personal records in every workout I did at the gym today, and now I get to talk about Final Fantasy Tactics. Oh, this is a good day, my friends. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of all turn-based strategy RPGs, including discussing how we can fix, upgrade, tweak, or otherwise modify classes and jobs from Final Fantasy Tactics for when we eventually get that remaster or remake, then a like on this video, a subscription to the channel, and consideration of checking out my YouTube memberships and my Patreon, which I'm looking at wholly revamping for the new year, so that it's actually up to date and good, then it would be very much appreciated if you could do all of those things. It's difficult to keep a channel like this going given the niche nature of the genre, but you guys are full of passion, so if you could, thank you so much. So what is the topic of the day today? Well, a couple months ago, I outlined how I would fix the Squire job in Final Fantasy Tactics, as it has some problems and could use its own identity outside the quote-unquote JP boost and move +1 job, right? In that video, I even expressed my desire to make this into an entire series discussing every job in the game, but when the immediate next job is Chemist, aka one of the best jobs in the game, that can get tough. And listen, I'm not being hyperbolic here. Anyone who thinks that Chemist isn't one of the single strongest jobs a character can have from the start to the end of FFT isn't paying attention. That said, there's still some things we could improve on, so today we're going to do exactly that. You'll see some timestamps on the screen here. You'll also find them in the actual bar at the bottom of your screen. If you want to jump to a particular chapter, find a particular topic, you'll be able to do so using those timestamps. I encourage you to hop around, check out the parts of the discussion that are the most interesting to you, or maybe grab a timestamp for something that you want to reference in the comments. Now, like the Squire video, this video will be broken up into a few parts: equipment, primary abilities, secondary abilities, support and movement abilities, etc., to craft a more comprehensive and cohesive job overview for any future versions of FFT. For Chemist, that means condensing some of its more redundant abilities, nixing others, and adding some new options to flesh out its kit, while also discussing why its overall build possibilities make it so strong for the entire game. As such, this should be a shorter episode, as I'm less worried about making the job work overall and more interested in streamlining and expanding the roles that it has. First off, we'll discuss the equipment. The nice thing about Chemist is that it has a very solid versatility of gear. Even if it's kind of specific in a couple roles, it's a nice wide variety that other classes might not have access to without specifically utilizing abilities to let them equip different types of gear that is not something that they can do naturally. Chemists have three major categories of equipment that they can utilize: knives, guns, and clothing for armor. Now, clothing is generally considered to be the best type of armor in the game, as it has a very wide variety of HP boosting, MP boosting, attack, magic, speed boosting abilities, different sorts of elemental resistances, or even absorptions. There's a lot going on with clothes, and while it's not necessarily going to give as big of a magic or MP boost as robes, or as big of an HP boost as actual proper plate armor does, it's a good all-rounder set of gear, and those stat boosts can come in really handy when you're trying to build out a specific role for a character. Knives are probably the weakest option that a Chemist has, and one of the weaker options for main combat weapons in general in FFT, but with a speedy class, they can deal a good amount of damage. There's some parrying options, a few different elemental options. They're not terrible, but really what makes the Chemist stand out so much is their ability to wield guns naturally. As one of the very few classes that can do so, this gives them a really nice niche as battlefield snipers as you move later into the game. What's nice about this is that the timing of the upgrade to when you're able to actually purchase guns when you recruit Mustadio, about halfway through Chapter 2, is around the time that you're not going to just be running all of your characters face first into the enemy and slapping each other until one party or the other is dead. You're actually going to have bigger battlefields with a greater variety of terrain and stronger enemies in general that you don't want your squishy Chemist to be trying to run into to fight in melee combat anyway. So now you can get guns and have a very stable, reliable damage option for what is otherwise a very dedicated healer. There's really nothing that I would want to change here, honestly. In fact, the reason that Chemist stays so strong through the entirety of FFT is how reliable they are. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into discussing the items skill as well, but the fact that guns deal a set amount of damage and are, generally speaking, completely unblockable means that from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, you will always be able to count on the damage output that your Chemist has. And sometimes if you're fighting a dodgy enemy or an enemy that's running away and keeping away from you because they're casting spells or trying to jump on you or whatever, or even just having the ability to quickly pick off something that's partially weakened, maybe casting abilities, they're charging, they're going to take bonus damage, it's extremely handy to just have instant snap of the fingers, boom, 36 damage, 72 damage, 164 damage, depending on what gun you're using, if something is charging, and what your zodiac affinities between these two characters are. There's next to nothing else in the game that gives you that level of reliable damage with 100% guaranteed accuracy at such a huge range outside of a few abilities like Worker 8, right? So it's really nice to have that on lock. Now, as far as abilities and skills are concerned in the job, we have a number of very notable things. And I've actually seen a lot of critique against Chemist as a job in general because so many people who come in from playing other RPGs, other turn-based strategy RPGs, say that, well, using items should just be a thing that anyone can do, right? But I disagree with that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the section where we're actually talking about fixing the class or changing, upgrading, what have you. We'll get to that in a second, but first we'll talk about the abilities. So the items skill is extremely valuable. Having the ability to use potions to heal 30 HP, high potions to heal 70 HP, X potions to heal 150 HP, elixirs to fully restore HP and MP, ethers to restore MP, Phoenix Downs to raise downed characters before they permanently die, and then all the variety of different status restoration items means that there's always going to be a role for, at the very least, someone with the item skill, if not the Chemist itself, to fulfill. Items are instant cast, you don't have to worry about a charge time for some big spell, and you can always rely on how much they're going to heal anyone and everyone. You're not messing around with any sort of faith between the caster and the recipient and what their zodiac signs are. It's just like, I've got around 150 damage on this character, I can feed them an X potion and they will get 150 HP back and be basically back to full health. Or I've got a character who's at half health and I just need to give them a little bit of a boost so that they don't die in the next turn. Boom. Toss them 70 HP, 150 HP, 30 HP maybe if you're earlier in the game, or maybe they're just a little hurt. Like, you can 100% rely on that at any given time, and that sort of reliability in a game like this where you're playing the numbers is massively valuable. Now, the status restoration abilities, not as useful. We'll talk about that more in the class update section. But realistically, it's not very often that you're actually going to be using a particular item to remove a particular status effect, right? Statuses don't get applied super often in FFT, especially if you're staying pretty efficient with taking out priority targets, outside of things like certain boss fights. And even then, there's so many that you need to learn when you really want to be putting your job points into other skills that the Chemist has, that there's a non-zero chance that you won't even know the skill that you need to use the item that restores the specific status effect that you're dealing with. And that's assuming that you even have the items on hand to begin with. Are they super expensive? Most of them aren't, but if you're going through the game and you've gone through 10 battles and you've never seen any of these status effects, maybe you got poisoned by a cat once, it's like, well, why am I even going to bother buying these items? I can use my money on gear, right? Which is constantly being updated. So there's a lot of variables at play affecting if you're actually even going to be able to remove a status effect with an item using a Chemist or someone equipped with the item's skill. But regardless, the healing is phenomenal. As a reaction ability, we have Auto Potion, which is definitely one of the best reaction abilities in the game. It is very common for people to grind up the JP in the Chemist class early on to equip Auto Potion on all of their characters. And then if you bother going through the process of raising their Brave, using Ramza's Steel skill, or if they just naturally have pretty decent Brave to begin with, you're looking at anywhere from like a 70% to 97% chance to use your lowest rank potion to heal yourself anytime you take any damage. And that is absolutely bonkers, especially if you get rid of potions and high potions, only have X potions in your inventory. Yeah, I'll just take a free 150 HP heal every time I get hit by anything. Cool. Sounds good. As far as support abilities are concerned, we have one really strong option and two that are pretty useless, all things considered. First off, we have re-equip, which I would argue may be something that should just kind of be a thing if you really want to include it at all. Might just want it on all jobs, perhaps, or remove it entirely. All it lets you do is, in the middle of a mission, go into your character's status screen and put new gear on them. The number of times this is going to be useful is pretty low. Like, yeah, maybe if a character gets a piece of gear broken or stolen, then you can equip something new, or like you steal a fancy accessory or weapon off of a boss and you immediately want to equip it, like, great. You're not really going to want to be wasting your turns on that, though, so it's going to be a pretty niche option, especially when there's so many good support abilities out there. Throw items is the natural inborn ability that chemists come with. It's what allows them to huck an item at someone who's 4 spaces away, and with throw items, you can have any job do that. This is obviously incredibly strong, just as the items themselves are very good. Being able to utilize them from range to help out a teammate that you maybe can't get to in time is absolutely massive. It's a very important part of having a chemist-style character set up, even if you don't have someone in the chemist class. Finally, we have Safeguard, which prevents your gear from being broken or stolen in the first place. It's kind of the antithesis to re-equip. And there's a few fights, a few scenarios where this is going to be nice to have. Say you're fighting Meliadul or any other character with Divine Knight abilities who can just pop your gear at a moment's notice, or if you're going to be going up against a large squad of regular knights who might wind up breaking your stuff, especially if you maybe have some rare or unique gear, like someone's wielding Gafgarian's blood sword, right? You kind of don't want that to just get shattered or stolen, so it's a fair option to put Safeguard on a character using that type of gear. But it's also really a major sunk cost issue because, again, there's so many other strong support abilities that, like, if you lose your gear, I would just reload and have a more efficiently built character, right? But that's just me. Finally, as far as movement abilities are concerned, we have the Treasure Hunter skill, which just allows you to, when you're walking around the battlefield, if you happen to land on a spot that has an item on it, you'll dig up the item and you'll get it. Cool. Generally not something that you're going to leave equipped on characters. More often than not, you're going to just want to have something that facilitates them moving further, jumping higher, getting HP back as they move around, etc. Especially if you don't know where the hidden treasure tiles are on any given map anyway. Not generally the most useful thing. The time that you're going to use this is when you're going through specific side quests, such as the Worker 8 side quest, when you want to be able to find some of the best gear in the game that are hidden on that map. Or if you're going through the deep dungeon and you want to find all the incredible gear that's buried on every floor of that, you're going to want it then. But it's a very specific tool with a very niche use case, not something that you're generally looking to pick up as soon as you're able to. Overall, though, there's a lot of really strong options in the Chemist's kit. It's not like every option is something that you're going to want, and that's really not the case for any job in FFT, but what's here is extremely strong, as we outlined. Now, with a quick overview of the job done, let's talk about how we're going to, again, quote-unquote, fix it, even though it doesn't really need fixing, but how I would propose that we modify Chemist. Now, this is where I want to get into that whole discussion of Chemist maybe shouldn't even exist that I see a lot of people say, because items should just be usable by everybody, yada, yada, yada. But hear me out here. Just as having martial mastery to properly wield a sword and shield and wear heavy armor and stand on the front line and outduel your opponent, break their gear, protect the front line, protect the back line, protect yourself, the skills of a knight are something you have to train for. You have to be good at it. You can't just pick up a sword and start going to town and hope to live very long. It's the same thing with a chemist. Like, yeah, okay, you can mix up a potion that you can just hand to someone and be like, drink this if you're hurt. But to have an entire collection of ingredients on your person, and like, what do you think they've got stuffed in those big bags on their backs or in the pouches on their stomachs, right? Like, that's where all of their herbs and tonics and ingredients come from. They're mixing that stuff on the battlefield. They don't just have like a complete stock. Like, yeah, okay, you buy a bunch of potions from the shop, but the implication is that you're buying the ingredients to make them, and then the chemist mixes it up on the battlefield before using it on you or tossing it to you for you to use on yourself. And that's something that takes skill. If you take just a bunch of random ingredients off the street, mix them together, and pour that stuff over your head or chug it down, you're as likely to have created some sort of acid or poison as you are to have created something that's going to heal your wounds in the middle of a fight. You really don't want to be messing around with that. If we look back to the good old days of ye olden medieval times, people like chemists and apothecaries were extremely valuable members of society with a very important role to play because the ignorant masses didn't know what the hell they were doing. That's what the chemist fulfills as a role. That's why you see story scenes where a character is poisoned or ill and they summon a chemist to actually help figure out what's going on with them. They can analyze what plants are in the area. Did they eat something? Were they poisoned by something? Are they ill in some other way? And is there an herb or a tonic that they can create that will help them? It's an important role, and I think it makes for a very interesting job as a result. So no, I do not think we should ever get rid of the Chemist class. It's extremely interesting from a world building standpoint, and the fact that you need to learn how to properly utilize items as a specific job makes perfect sense to me. I also don't think we need to change anything about the actual functionality of the class from an equipment standpoint. I really like that as people of learning, they can actually be taught to use guns naturally. Like, it's something that they can just figure out, using gunpowder to throw a bullet at speed to hurt someone. Like, that's something that would generally be within their wheelhouse. They are a chemist, after all. Chemistry, explosive force, burning of materials to create force, things like that, right in their wheelhouse. Knives and clothes are also perfectly good options if you want to have a knife for a more defensive option, something that can parry, protect your chemist, cool. And then clothes are just great. Like, they're not knights, right? They're not going to be wearing armor. They're a doctor on the battlefield for all intents and purposes. And you do get a lot of really nice opportunities for build crafting with the clothes items in the game if you so choose. So all perfect there. The only thing that I would really recommend changing is cutting down the overall number of skills that you need to learn for the job. This is something that people leverage a lot of critique against FFT for in general. I do tend to agree. There's a lot of skills bloat, a lot of things that could be condensed down, and then potentially, if you wanted, other more interesting options included in their place. And that's basically what we're going to be doing today. We'll quickly go through the reaction, support, and movement abilities first, because those are going to be pretty snappy to get cleared up. I want to spend the most time on the items skill as the skill that has the most options in it, and that is the biggest identity of the job. First of all, auto potion. This should probably be nerfed, honestly. I would say, realistically, rather than pulling a potion out of your inventory and then, you being able to game the system by only having X potions and getting a massive amount of healing every time you use it, it should either be a set amount of HP that it restores every time you get hit and it activates, something, maybe like 45, 50, maybe it scales with your level to make some amount of sense for the amount of HP that you have without being absolutely busted like X potions are with it. Or it needs to be like its own separate % chance to activate, so you can't just get 97 Brave and basically blunt all damage you take by 150, right? Either one of those options would work. I feel like making it so that it's just a set amount that, again, maybe scales with your level makes the most sense, because making it its own separate percentage chance to trigger would require separating it from the Brave system and creating like a whole different RNG trigger system for it, and that would probably be a little awkward. So I would say make it a set amount that you heal. If you want to use a potion out of your inventory just for the sake of having that economy management, fair enough, I'm fine with that. But nix the whole X potion super heal thing, I think. I think that's the best way to tweak this, so it's not the obvious option for most characters. For support abilities, I think we can just throw away re-equip. I really don't think that that's important at all. Either give it to all characters or just have it be something that you're not worried about in the middle of a fight, because realistically, it makes no sense. Why would the chemist just be like, hold on, everyone stop, I need to put on a different hat? Where is it? Digging around in their bag. I know I had that beret in here somewhere. It's the purple one. It gives me 2 extra speed. I really need to be quicker on this battlefield. Now, don't swing that sword at me, sir. Hold on. This is my contractually obligated opportunity to be able to change my hat in the middle of this fight. The union will have words with you. I will talk to HR if you swing that sword at me. Like, it just doesn't make much sense. I'm not a huge fan of it. So take it out or give it to everyone innately, one way or the other. It doesn't need to be here. Throw items, I think, is perfectly fine as it is. It's another one of those nice support abilities that allows you to blend 2 different jobs together to create your own unique type of setup for a given character. Like, if you want a knight that's also going to be a battlefield medic, cool. You got your heavy armor, you got your swords, you got your shields, give them throw items and the items ability, and now they can be a chemist and a knight simultaneously. It's all they're going to do, but there's something to be said for that. It's pretty handy. Safeguard, I think, is also fine to keep here. I don't think you really need to get rid of it or move it anywhere else. It could maybe make more sense on a different class, but given as how Chemist is one of your 2 starting classes, having the ability to have everyone be able to learn this skill at baseline, in case you are dealing with something where you're going to be running into issues where your gear might no longer be safe, I think that's fair. I think it's an appropriate place to put it, especially because Squire already has too many other support abilities as it is. Finally, Treasure Hunter, I think is also fine. It does make sense. You know, you have the idea of like, oh, the chemist is walking across the battlefield, and oh, that's an interesting looking herb over there. Oh, I can make something with that. I'll pick that while I'm not being actively attacked, right? So is it a niche option? Sure, but not every ability needs to be top tier. Otherwise, everything would just be boring. So having it as a niche option, maybe something that you want to throw on from time to time just to see what you can dig up, and then use it in later maps to find cool, powerful treasure. Great. Items, though. This is where things are going to be interesting. So here's what I propose. Keep Potion, High Potion, X Potion, Ether, High Ether, Elixir, and Phoenix down. Keep all of those exactly as they are. I don't think you really need to worry about changing JP. I don't think you need to worry about changing like how the actual items function or anything like that. I think they're all very solid. In FFT, the three biggest factors that you're going to be dealing with is how much HP do you have left, how much MP do you have left, and is someone unconscious and about to be gone forever. If you have items that can fix those things, the chemist is going to be fulfilling its role 90% of the time, and that's great. What I think needs to be changed is all of those status restoration items. Those, I think, can be removed. Or at the very least, if you want to keep the items so that you need to have them on hand, at the very least, condense those abilities into categories. I took inspiration for this idea from the Salve skill that Squire has, which removes, like blindness, poison, and something else that I can't remember off the top of my head at the exact moment. I should have looked it up, but I thought I would remember. But it removes like 3 different abilities, right? Just quick, easy, things that characters are likely to run into early in the game. Have that skill, but as a like general medicine skill. Maybe you can name it Medicine 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Or if you want to be silly, Medicine, Medicina, Medicine Ga, Medicine Ya. If you want to follow the magic casting naming convention, then fair enough, that's fine. But have different levels of each skill that are used, maybe using the items that you can buy in the shop, to heal a wide variety of different status effects and have the appropriate skill for the next like 3 or 4 statuses that you're only going to run into as you get further into the game anyway. That's why Salve is so good. It addresses the different status effects you're going to run into in Chapter 1. Then, as you get into Chapter 2, maybe you'll start seeing Silence, Sleep, Petrification, potentially, Doom. Get past that, Zombification, Vampirism, Berserk, other things like that. Each of these higher and higher danger status effects that only later game enemies use can be condensed into different tiers of this skill. That shows the mastery of the chemist as they get better and better at using more esoteric items to deal with weirder and weirder status effects. I think it's really flavorful, and it would make it so you have way less skills that especially a new player is fussing over, trying to be like, well, when am I going to need to be able to cure frog or petrification? I've only ever seen poison and blindness. Like, I don't know when these come up. When is it worth putting my points into it? And yeah, most of those skills aren't super expensive from a JP standpoint, but I think it would just create a little bit of simplicity and cut down on a little bloat while still having the functionality of the class exist. Because let's be honest here, you're going to run into a lot of statuses in the game maybe once or twice. Like, what's the number of times you're going to get hit by Doom in FFT? Other than when you're fighting Cuchulainn, the end of Chapter 2 boss, who does it to like your whole party. It's not very often. Maybe once in a while if you're unlucky in a random battle, but more likely than not, you're not going to be prepared to deal with it then anyway. So like, just condense it all down, make it simpler, have a level of mastery for your chemist where they become able to deal with these issues, much like how Black Mage and White Mage have levels of their spells. And I think it makes for a much more neat overall experience. And as far as changing or quote-unquote fixing Chemist is concerned, that's pretty much everything I've got for you. It's a beautiful job because it doesn't care about stats. It doesn't care about growths. Everything that it's doing is going to be the same level of effectiveness from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. It cares about its gear, it cares about its items, and that's it. So it's a very stable rock that you can build a team around, knowing that you're always going to have consistent ranged damage, knowing that you're always going to have consistent healing, and that's that's not going to change or really diminish over the course of the game. Makes it so much easier to take some more wild out there options in a party when you're not worried about like, okay, but how is it going to be able to protect itself or heal itself? Well, that's what the Chemist is for. It's got a phenomenal kit of gear. It's got a really nice set of abilities that with like a couple minor tweaks like we discussed today would make it really refined and feel really good to utilize. And this is pretty much exactly what I want to see. Chemist is one of my favorite jobs in Final Fantasy Tactics. I always take one from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, even if they're a chemist in disguise and just have items and throw items equipped. Either way, it's a phenomenal skill set, and it's one of my favorite aspects of FFT that I have not really seen in other turn-based strategy RPGs, and I think that should really change because it's a cool idea. I am curious about what your ideas are for the class, however. Do you think there's different equipment and gear that it should be able to use? Do you think there are different types of abilities that it should have access to, either from other FFT games, other turn-based strategy games in general, or just something that you came up with that you think would be a good fit? What are your thoughts on my proposed changes? And more importantly, do you think we could ever see anything like this in the mythical remake, remaster, reborn FFT project when it finally comes out? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments down below. And until the next episode, where I guess we'll be talking about Night, that'll be an interesting one. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.